Alright, here we go with a second example of calculating the mean and standard deviation with a grouped frequency distribution formula for standard deviation. So let's say that we've got some homework scores that we want to find the mean and standard deviation for. We have some class intervals of 8 to 10, 5 to 7, and 2 to 4. We've been given the midpoints of those class intervals. So the midpoint of 8 to 10 is 9. The midpoint of 5 to 7 is 6. And the midpoint of 2 to 4 is 3. And if that hadn't been given to you, you could calculate that on your own by adding the lowest and highest value of the class interval and dividing by 2. So for example, 8 plus 10 is 18, divided by 2 is 9. 5 plus 7 is 12, divided by 2 is 6, and 2 plus 4 is 6, divided by 2 is 3. The other given information we need is the frequency column. So in our frequency column, we have 12 cases in the 8 to 10 category, 15 cases in the 5 to 7 category, and 7 cases in the 2 to 4 category, making for a total number of cases of 34. So, to calculate the mean and standard deviation, I'm going to go with my first step, and I'm going to calculate the FM column. Now remember, the FM column is created by multiplying the midpoint by the frequency for that midpoint. So we are going to multiply 9 times 12, and so that will be 108. Then we're going to multiply the midpoint of 6 by the frequency of 15, and that value is going to be 90. And then we're going to multiply the midpoint of 3 by the frequency of 7, and that will create a value of 21. Then our second step will be to calculate the sum of the FM column in our second step. So if we take those values and we add 108 plus 90 is 198, plus 21 equals 219 for the sum of FM. Now, as I mentioned in previous examples, there are other ways that we can proceed into step 3, but I'm going to proceed into step 3 by calculating the FM squared column. Now remember, to create the FM squared column, we first square the midpoint and then multiply by F, the frequency. So in that first row, we're going to take the midpoint of 9, square it, so 9 times 9 is 81, and then we're going to multiply 81 by the frequency of 12, and that'll give us the value for FM squared for the first category of 972. Then for the midpoint of 6, we're going to square that. So 6 multiplied by 6 is 36. And then we're going to multiply that by the frequency count of 15. And that will give us a value of 540. And then we're going to take our final midpoint of 3 and square it. So 3 multiplied by 3 is 9. Multiplied by the frequency count of 7 gives us a value of 63. So there is our FM squared column. Then in the fourth step, we are going to sum the FM column to create the value sum of FM squared. So we take 972 plus 540 plus 63, and that gives us a sum of FM squared value of 1,575. Now, at this point, again, depending on how you like to calculate things, I am going to go ahead and calculate the mean and then square it. So since I've got a grouped frequency distribution, I'm going to use the mean formula for grouped frequency distributions, which is x bar equals the sum of FM over n. And so plugging into our formula, the sum of FM we calculated in step 2, in case you were wondering why I did that. And our n was given to us at the beginning of the problem. So plugging into our mean formula, we have 219 over 34. And if we take 219 and divide by 34, your mean to 2 decimal places is 6.44. But now we need to calculate the mean squared, because remember, we're going to need the mean squared for the formula. So we take our 6.44 and we square it. So 6.44 squared, the 2 decimal places, is 41.47. Okay. Now that we've done all of that work, we have everything we need to plug into our standard deviation formula for grouped frequency distributions. So in step 6, I'm going to plug that in to our formula for S equaling standard deviation, the square root of sum of FM squared over n minus the mean squared. So sum of FM squared we calculated in step 4. So solving for S, the standard deviation, we have a value of 1,575 for sum of FM squared over the n, again, of 34, minus the mean squared. And the mean squared, again, out of step 5 is 41.4. I'm losing my paper. This is what happens when we try and do this on an uneven surface. So 41.47. Pardon my handwriting there. So in step 7, we are going to do the division. So we take 1,575 and divide by 34. And that's going to give us a value to 2 decimal places of 46.32 minus our mean squared of 41.47. In step 8, we're just going to subtract 46.32. We're going to subtract from that 41.47. and to 2 decimal places. That gives us a value of 4.85. Now the value 4.85, if we were interested in it, would be the variance, but as we've learned, we want to go ahead and take the square root of the variance so that we get the standard deviation back in the original units that we started with. And so taking the square root of 4.85 to 2 decimal places, we have a standard deviation of 2.20. And so what we've discovered is that the homework mean is a 6.44 with a standard deviation of plus or minus 2.20 points. Thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.